We're talking about Hinduism. When we think about time in Hinduism, I think it makes sense to imagine it in two ways that are linked to one another. The first is cosmic time, the big cosmic time, and the other is internal or human time. Now, in general, in Hinduism, it makes sense to think about all of these things not just related but linked. That when something happens in the cosmos, it has a microcosmic reflection in our own lives. So things don't always happen external to us or internal to us, but it's a kind of a conversation between that which is outside and that which is inside. Really, really important to remember that there is not necessarily a difference between outside and inside, but that they are thought of in relative but different ways. So the reading that we did for today introduces this in some very important ways. And what I'd like to do is read some of it, a few lines of it, and then I'll intersperse a little bit of description and a little bit of analysis into that so we can work together through some of this difficult language. This reading comes from some of the Hindu sacred scripture, and as I said before, if you're not used to it, it can be hard stuff. So just sort of hold on and come along for the ride. Atomic time is measured according to its covering a particular atomic space. That time which covers the unmanifest aggregate of atoms is called the great time. The division of gross time is calculated as follows. 2 atoms make 1 double atom. 3 double atoms make 1 hexatom. The hexatom is visible in the sunshine which enters through the holes of a window screen. One can clearly see that a hexatom goes up towards the sky, almost if it were a dust mote or maybe a floater in your eye. The time duration needed for the integration of 3 is called a truthi, and 100 truthis make 1 Veda. 3 Vedas make 1 lava. The duration of time of 3 of them is equal to 1 nimesha. The combination of 3 nimeshas makes 1 kishana. 1 kishana combined together makes 1 kashtra, a word I can never say correctly, and 3 of them make 1 lagu. 15 lagus make 1 nadika, which is also called a danda. 2 dandas make 1 muhurta, and 6 or 7 dandas make 1/4 of a day or night according to the human calculation. Got that? Are you ready for the quiz? It's tough stuff. But look at what's going on here. Very cool. From the very beginning, atomic time is measured according to its covering a particular atomic space. That time which covers the unmanifest aggregate of atoms is called the great time. Now remember that this stuff was being written, and even before that chanted, thousands of years ago. And what are they saying? They're saying that time is somehow related to space. And the way we understand time is the aggregate of the smallest particles of matter in space. Let me say that again. Time is the aggregate of the smallest particles of matter in space. So what are they doing here, right? The ancient Hindu scriptures are saying that we ought to think about time not as something external and independent, but we should be thinking about time as the relationship of time, space, and matter. So when we think about time in a Hindu way, try not to consider it as something independent of other things, but rather interactive and interdependent with space and matter. And this is a great way to get out Hinduism in general, this idea of everything being related to one another, of it all being part of something bigger. We'll get to that in a little while. So if we keep going and reading, Maitreya, this is the enlightened one in the story, says that the 4 millenniums are called Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali Yugas. Remember that word yuga. The aggregate number of years of all of the yugas combined is equal to 12,000 years of the demigods. Okay, this one's tough. Just again, hold on with me because it's really cool. Let's go to this idea of yuga. They're talking about 4 yugas here, Satya, Trota, I can never say these correctly, Dvapara, and Kali. Each one you might think of as a season, as one of the four sort of divine seasons, but they're not all the same length. The first is 1,728,000 years. The second is 1,296,000 years. The third is 864,000 years, and the Kali Yuga is the shortest at 432,000 years. In the Satya Yuga, to be reading some more, in the Satya millennium, mankind properly and completely maintained the principles of religion. But in other millenniums, religion gradually decreased by one part as irreligion was proportionally admitted. Whoa. So we have started out with atoms, stuff. Atoms, stuff in space becoming time. Time at the tiniest little bit of existence, moving now to four long divine seasons called yugas. But they're not just yugas. Listen to what the text says. It says that in a certain millennium, religion is stronger. In another millennium, religion is weaker. In other texts and other translations from the Sanskrit, it doesn't say religion, but rather enlightenment, that more people are enlightened in some times and less in other times. So now we not only have a relationship of space, matter, time, from the very small to the very large, but now we see that all of those things are related to enlightenment, to religion, to human beings' relationship to the divine. It gets even bigger. Because 1,000 of the yuga structures, those four yugas together make one sort of yuga year. If you think of 1,000 of them, that is one day in the life of the Hindu god Brahma. So maybe it's really half a day. It's during the day and then there's another one at night. So 1,000 of those huge long periods make up one day in the life of Brahma. Now, if you know anything about Hinduism, you'll remember that Brahma is the god that creates the world. He's the creator god, and then Vishnu is the god that sort of maintains things, often also known as Lord Krishna. And then Lord Shiva is the god who destroys things so that Brahma can again begin. That's one day of the god Brahma's life. Brahma lives about 100 years of Brahma life, or Brahma years, and that translates in human terms to 311.04 trillion human years. So in this one text and set of texts, we can understand moving from the very smallest particle of matter to the very largest imagined sort of existence of the god, Brahma, 311.04 trillion human years. And when that's done, the cycle happens again. But go back and look at the text and think of what it means, because the text is not just talking about matter. It's not just talking about space. It's not just talking about time. And it's not just talking about enlightenment or the gods. It's talking about all of those things at the same time. And in fact, that gives us a great clue that we'll use as we go on in our study of Hinduism. And that's that there is a relationship of atomic time to cosmic time, to divine time, to human time, to religiousness, to enlightenment, to the stars above us. And that ultimately, in Hinduism, or at least one strain of Hinduism, everything actually is part of one thing. Everything might be understood as the one thing called Brahman. Not Brahma, but Brahman. So time, space, matter, humans, gods, everything ultimately is one, Brahman. We can't understand it, we don't feel it, but that's the truth. Before we go on to the next topic, let's go back for a moment to that idea of sand art in the glass. Even though there are different layers of sand and they might be different colors, that sand and the art in that sand is actually one thing. It's sand. But then think about the glass, because the glass too is made out of what? Sand. It seems to be different, but actually all is one, all is Brahman.